Angie Dickinson stayed quiet for many years, but not anymore. At 93 years old, she finally told everyone about the 5 actors she really hated working with. This famous actress, who was super cool in old crime shows and cowboy movies, didn't hold back. She said their names and told stories about how they betrayed her, acted mean, and were really rude. One of them made my life terrible on the movie set. She said, "Hollywood's golden time was never as golden as people thought." Jack Webb wasn't her husband, boyfriend, or even someone she dated. He was just the most powerful man in show business back then. This man had so much power that he could control everything in Hollywood. He could make one phone call and ruin Angie's dreams, her freedom, and her whole future. He didn't have to hurt her or yell at her. He didn't need any proof or bad stories about her. All he had to do was say one sentence, and the city of dreams turned against her. He didn't need to hurt me. Just one phone call was enough. His name was Jack Webb, the TV boss whose shows in the 1970s were super popular. He was the man who made lots of hit TV shows, the kind that everyone watched and never missed. Everyone knew him as a smart producer and a tough business guy who got things done. But secretly, he was the kind of man who could make a star's career great or completely destroy it. There was no big scandal between him and Angie, no love stories, no photographers taking pictures of them at late night parties. But Angie always said he was the man who destroyed her whole career in less than 12 hours. It happened quietly, where almost no one could see it. Angie remembered that moment very clearly because it hurt her so much. "I once said no when he wanted to sleep with me," she said. "I thought I was famous enough that people would respect me." She believed back then that her talent and how popular she was would protect her. She thought she was safe and that nothing bad could happen to her. She was wrong. The very next morning, 3 movie roles she had already gotten just disappeared. Movies she had worked really hard for were gone. Her contracts got canceled without any warning. Movie studio bosses suddenly changed their minds about choosing her for parts. Her agent's phone calls went unanswered. Her dressing room, which used to be full of helpers and people doing her hair and makeup, became completely silent and empty. In just a few hours, what people thought about her changed, not because she did something wrong, but because she said no. Friends in the movie business, people who used to celebrate with her at movie premieres, now whispered nervously when they saw her. One of them, who was braver than the others, came close and quietly said what everyone else was too scared to say out loud. "You said no to him. Your career is over." No one dared to say Jack Webb's name in public. No one even looked at him during meetings. His power was scary and cold, and everyone in the business knew it was safer to stay quiet than to make him angry. He didn't need to hurt anyone or make threats. Just the idea that he didn't like you was enough to make someone disappear from Hollywood overnight. Angie didn't cry, she didn't beg. She just walked into her dressing room, packed her things without saying anything, and left. The city that had once welcomed her with bright lights and loud cheering now felt like a door that was closed to her. And right then, she learned something she would remember for the rest of her life. "I could win over audiences," she said, "but I would never beat the system. The system wasn't built on talent. It wasn't even built on luck. It was built on power. Power held by men like Jack Webb, who could erase a woman's hard work as easily as pressing a button on an old phone." Years later, people would ask Angie what happened. Why did her career, which used to be so promising, suddenly fade away? She would give a small, bitter smile and only answer, "One man decided I didn't deserve it." And in Hollywood, that's all it takes. Jack Webb never said her name in public. He didn't have to. His silence was louder than any accusation. Not being in her life was more harmful than any scandal. For Angie, it wasn't just the end of a career. It was the death of a dream, the belief that success in Hollywood was about talent, working hard, or being charming. It wasn't. It was about power, and she had none. Larry King, not as famous as Frank, not as powerful as Jack, but he was the one who loved her in the cruelest way. He didn't hit me, didn't insult me, didn't scream. He just stared at me every time I smiled at someone else. At first, Larry King seemed like a gift, a man who loved Angie more than anyone ever had. He came into her life being very gentle and kind. He held her hand like it was the most special thing in the world. He petted her hair at night and whispered promises that made her feel safe. "You're mine forever," he told her. "If you leave me, I won't survive, but I won't let you live in peace either." At first, she laughed at how intense he was. She thought it was passion, the kind of love that takes over your whole life like in romance books. But slowly, almost without her noticing, that love turned into a prison. It started with little things. He asked questions about why she wanted to see certain friends. He made sneaky comments about her coworkers, saying they were jealous and didn't really care about her. Then, one by one, her friendships outside of him began to die. He convinced her to quit a project that wasn't good enough for her. He told her the movie business was full of people who wanted to use her. And soon her once busy social life turned into empty evenings spent only with him. Every time I came home 10 minutes late, Angie remembered, he'd get really angry. Not loudly, not with words, just a quiet burning anger that filled the room like smoke. When she smiled at someone else on television, just being polite and nice, he would grab the remote control and smash the TV screen. When she said something nice about someone during an interview, his eyes would get dark with an unspoken warning. She belonged to him, completely to him. Then came the spying. Angie found out much later that he had secretly put a microphone in her car. He told himself it was to protect her, but the truth was much uglier. He wanted to hear if she sighed over someone else's name. He wanted proof that she was always thinking of him and only him. When she finally got brave enough to leave, the nightmare got worse. Larry didn't beg like most men might. Instead, he put on a scary show that still haunted her. He drank one drink after another, walking around like a crazy person. Then, in a terrifying moment, he slammed his own head into a mirror. The glass broke, blood dripping onto his face, his clothes, and finally onto her shoulder as he held onto her tightly. "I love you so much," he whispered, his breath hot and heavy in her ear. "It's driving me crazy." It wasn't love. Angie understood that in the cold silence that came after his breakdown, it was obsession. It was control dressed up like love. She wasn't his partner. She was something he owned. By then, Angie was no longer the woman she used to be. She had lost her friends, her jobs, and even her laughter. The bright, happy girl who once made rooms light up was now a shadow who moved carefully, always thinking about how her words or actions might make him angry. "I used to think pain was the price of great love," she said years later. "I thought if it hurt, it must mean it was real, but now I know real love never comes with fear." Getting away from him wasn't easy. It never is with someone who believes they own you. But the day she finally walked away, she didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't explain. She just left, knowing she might never fully heal from the years she spent in his prison. Larry King wasn't the man who ruined her career like Jack Webb. He wasn't the man who betrayed her like Frank. He was something worse. He was the man who made her believe love and fear were the same thing, and then showed her how scary that lie could be. Bert Bakarach, he was her husband and a mother's worst nightmare. People ask why I hate him. I don't hate, I loathe. Bert Bakarach, musical genius, the smooth, golden-haired composer whose songs defined a time period. In the 1960s and 70s, his name meant elegance and class. To everyone, he was the man who could make a piano sing, the Grammy-winning star whose songs became the soundtrack of millions of people's lives. But to Angie, he was nothing more than a runaway in expensive clothes, a man who ran away from every responsibility that didn't make him look good. They got married in 1965, a picture-perfect Hollywood wedding. Angie was stunning and at the peak of her career. Her name was on movie posters and her face was on every magazine cover. The media called them the golden couple, the perfect example of beauty, glamour, and success. Photographers followed them everywhere. At red carpet movie premieres, they smiled for the flashing cameras, holding hands, whispering sweet things that looked natural to outsiders. But inside the cold marble walls of their $1 million Beverly Hills mansion, The truth was much darker. Nights went on and on where Angie cried silently into silk pillows, while Bert disappeared with the same excuse again and again, seeking inspiration. Inspiration for what? She never asked. She already knew. He'd disappear for hours, sometimes days, coming back smelling like champagne and someone else's perfume. When she confronted him, he would give that easy smile, shrugging with a calmness that made her feel like she was the crazy one. When their daughter Nikki Bakarach was born, Angie thought foolishly that maybe being a father would make him stay, but only weeks after doctors told them news that broke her heart. Nikki was different. She had autism, a condition that people still didn't understand very well back then. Angie remembered holding her tiny baby in shaking arms, her mind spinning with questions and fears, and Bert, he stood there with no expression on his face. All he asked was, "Will she affect my schedule?" That was the moment the last bits of love she had for him broke. From then on, she raised Nikki almost completely alone. She learned to work with doctors, treatments, and the lonely judgment of a society that didn't yet understand kids who were different. Bert, instead of being a father, chose to run away. He didn't find comfort in his family's arms, but in the arms of beautiful women on fancy boats and in the bright lights of Las Vegas. There was one night Angie never forgot. Nikki needed a special treatment, something that required both parents to sign papers. Angie called him, her voice breaking as she begged, "Please, Bert, this is for Nikki. Just sign the papers." His response was ice cold, "I'm recording. Don't call again unless she's dead." The cruelty of those words haunted her. But even more painful was the betrayal that had been going on for a long time. She later learned that while she was pregnant with their daughter, when she was most vulnerable, Bert had been sleeping with a young singer. It wasn't just one mistake. It was ongoing. He even brought her into their home, the very place Angie was recovering with their newborn baby. "I woke up in the middle of the night and heard their laughter downstairs," Angie remembered years later. It wasn't music, it wasn't art, it was betrayal. By 1981, after years of emotional abandonment, cheating, and humiliation, Angie finally left. The divorce made headlines, but the newspapers wrote about it in soft terms. The couple split amicably. To the outside world it seemed almost civilized, but inside Angie's heart there was nothing friendly about it. She never truly forgave him. Not for the way he destroyed their marriage, not for the way he turned his back on their child. "Bert didn't just destroy a wife's life," she said. "He shattered the fragile, tiny world of an innocent child who needed her father." For Angie, the man the world worshipped for his romantic songs was no genius. He was simply a coward dressed in expensive clothes, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts and a silence that was louder than any song he ever wrote. Frank Sinatra. Frank could make you feel like the most cherished woman in the world before breakfast, and by sundown he could make you feel like a broken doll tossed aside. To Hollywood, they were the golden couple, the glamorous pair who made everyone look at every movie premiere and filled gossip magazines with photos of candlelit dinners, boat trips, and private parties with famous people. But to Angie, it was something much darker. The most dangerous relationship of my life, she would later call it. In the beginning, Frank was intoxicating. He made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. There were morning bouquets of beautiful flowers delivered to her dressing room with little handwritten notes, "You're my everything." There were private dinners by the pool, the moonlight dancing across the water while he whispered in her ear that she was unlike anyone he had ever known. He made her feel like the center of his universe. For a brief moment, she believed she was, but the sweetness had an expiration date. It disappeared the moment she dared to step outside the boundaries of the world he controlled. The change came suddenly, like a switch had been flipped. When Angie got a role that required a simple scripted kiss with another actor, Frank's mask slipped. He didn't just disapprove, he exploded. He threw the script in her face and hissed through clenched teeth, "You are mine. No one touches you, not even on screen." From that moment on, he tightened his grip. He banned her from seeing her male friends. He had her followed on movie sets, sending his people to hide in the shadows, reporting back on every conversation she had. He demanded to know her call sheets and her filming schedule, and when she dared to go to an audition he hadn't approved of, she returned home to a nightmare. Her clothes were torn up, her belongings were smashed, every photograph of them together was burned to ash. Their burn. Frank never hit her, but he didn't need to. His power was sneakier, more suffocating. He broke her by taking away her voice. He controlled her contracts, her co-stars, her career, even her sleep. Angie once wrote in her journal, "He didn't want me to love him. He wanted me to forget anyone else existed." It reached its cruelest point in 1970. Angie had been chosen for a lead role in a critically acclaimed independent film, a project that could have changed her career forever. For a brief moment, she felt hope. Maybe this was her chance to get herself back. But Frank wouldn't allow it. He picked up the phone in the middle of the night and called the director at 200 a.m. In his calm but icy voice, he made the threat, "If you keep her in that movie, I'll make sure you never work in Hollywood again." The next morning, the role was gone. No explanation, no phone call, just silence. Angie knew instantly what had happened. That was the moment she realized the truth. Loving Frank Sinatra was like living in a golden cage, pretty on the outside, but empty and airless within. He had trapped her in a world where she no longer existed as her own person. She would later sum it up in one devastating line, "I once loved the man every woman dreamed of, but I paid with my soul." On the surface, it had been romance. Behind closed doors, it was possession, and once she escaped, she promised never again to mistake a cage for love. Johnny Carson, the legendary TV host who could make or break careers with a single joke, had once told Angie she was like family. They shared quiet dinners after his show tapings, long phone calls during difficult moments in her life. He was the one who sent her flowers when her mother died, the one who toasted her at private parties, calling her the queen of the screen. She believed him. She believed that behind the razor, sharp wit and the calculated charm was a man who valued her, not just her image. But what he did behind the scenes would become, in Angie's own words, the most disgusting betrayal of my life. It was supposed to be her big night, a Lifetime Achievement Award presented live on Carson's show. The press built it up as a moving comeback for a timeless star. Fans filled the studio, cameras flashed, and Angie's team told her it would be nothing but celebration. For once, she allowed herself to feel proud. She wore a gown of silver silk, her hair swept into soft waves. She smiled as she waited in the green room, practicing a speech about gratitude, strength, and second chances. Minutes before she was set to walk on stage, Carson received something, an old deleted clip from decades earlier. In it, Angie had accidentally mentioned the name of a powerful producer, a man long accused of abuse, but never held accountable. At the time, the studio had buried it, fearing backlash. The scandal had faded, forgotten by the public. That clip could have brought everything back. It could have made her look like someone desperate to dig up the past for attention. And she didn't even know it was in his hands. Instead of warning her, instead of protecting her like the friend he claimed to be, Johnny smiled. He hugged her, whispered, "You'll be great out there," and then live on air in front of millions. He twisted the knife. "Our Angie," he said, beaming into the camera, "is a timeless icon, a woman who knows when to speak and when to stay silent." The words seemed harmless to the audience. They clapped, they cheered, but Angie froze. She felt the blood drain from her face because she understood. It wasn't a compliment. It was a warning on air to her, to the world. It told her very clearly, "Don't you dare say his name again." She smiled through it. She gave her speech. She held her tears until she was alone, because in that moment she realized something chilling. Carson had chosen the audience over her. He had chosen the ratings, the applause, the smooth story of the night. Later, the punishment came quietly, sneakily. Her name disappeared from nomination lists. Roles she was promised vanished. Producers stopped returning calls. There was no public scandal, no headlines, just a slow erasing, as if she had somehow become inconvenient. And when she tried to explain it, no one believed her. Who would? Johnny Carson was untouchable. Beloved, the man America trusted every night before bed. To the public, he was a witty gentleman. To her, he was the one who smiled as he cut her down. People think betrayal is about love. Angie would later say, but it's not. I didn't need his love. I needed his loyalty, and he chose the audience, not me. Only Angie and his eyes that night knew what really happened. What do you think about the 5 actors that Angie Dickinson hates the most? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.